Thank you. Hello and welcome to the special business meeting for the District of Squamish for December 12th. What's that, sorry? I'm told I need to stretch for one more minute so we get to the actual 6 o'clock posted start time. That's okay. I don't actually have a minute of material prepared, so there we are. We're at 6 o'clock. So welcome to the welcome to the special business meeting for the District of Squamish for today, December 12th, 2023. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have any concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting. Can I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So we're on to item 3, bylaws, and we will turn over to staff to run us through the 5-year financial plan bylaw.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Megan Latimer. I'm the Acting Chief Administrative Officer tonight, and I'm joined here with Roland Russell, our Senior Financial Analyst with the district. We also have a number of budget managers online tonight to answer questions. Staff are here to present to Council the first 3 readings of the Financial Plan Bylaw number 3025-2023. So just to give you a bit of an overview of how we got here, staff began working with Council on preparing the financial plan back in June of this year. Public engagement began in October and carried on through November. And we had a public input follow-up meeting 2 weeks ago to provide Council with the priorities that were coming in from the community. And tonight we're here for first 3 readings. And then next week we are scheduled, if all goes to plan, to move to adoption of the financial plan, should Council wish. The overall financial plan is prioritized by risk, life safety, legislation, and the district strategic plan. The financial plan project package also indicates the drivers of why a project is incorporated into the financial plan and considers where staff capacity is needed to meet service level requirements and strategic plan initiatives. This methodology is used for projects as well as for the operating budget. Move to the next slide. This year has been an incredibly challenging year with increased cost pressures, increased borrowing costs, a growing community with diverse needs, housing shortages, an ambitious strategic plan, labor market competitiveness, and several large facility construction projects underway. Inflation, supply chain continue to be a challenge, which is felt all across all departments and within all projects. Transit expansion continues to be a community priority and requires annual investment. The district has invested significantly in aging facilities with the upgrades to Brennan Park Recreation Center, 2 new fire halls, and a public works facility, which has been funded through land reserve grants and borrowing. The increased costs associated with borrowing are spread across several years in the 2024-2028 financial plan. The 2023 financial fiscal service level changes focus primarily on labor contracts for the fire department, the RCMP union contract, results of the transit strike, and an organizational restructure during the spring amendment. The costs associated with this have annualization impacts on the 2024 to 2028 financial plan. The district continues to be challenged with staff resources as the community continues to expand and change service expectations. Additional strategic initiatives are added and new capital assets that require operating and maintenance. Finally, the 2024-2028 financial plan has incorporated efforts towards the proactive management of our assets through a phased reserve funding strategy to meet the goals of the council-endorsed 2022 asset management report. This ensures that reserves are being replenished in accordance with maintenance and replacement schedules long into the future. The 2024-2028 financial plan has taken a thoughtful and measured approach to addressing these cost pressures, and we are incredibly proud of the efforts that staff have made to create this financial plan despite the mounting economic and market challenges. Some highlights include limiting 2024 to just service level maintenance, which is just the additional resources required to maintain current service level expectations. This is after several years of minimal investment due to the focus on labor contract negotiations, pandemic, and post-pandemic limitations. As the capital plan requirements continue to grow, a major methodology shift in process improvement for the district is to attribute the staff that are focused on capital implementations to be funded by the capital projects themselves. This improvement ensures the accurate cost of the capital project is captured and accounted for, and allows the district the flexibility to scale resources to support capital implementation, including consultant support. Thank you. District staff have made tremendous efforts to absorb the inflation costs where possible throughout the operating and project budgets. As well, initiatives were reprioritized and delayed where possible to keep budgets as consistent as possible year to year. Staff maximize funding opportunities, leveraging external funding sources and utilizing provisions to smooth costs year over year. The district improved cash flow management processes in 2022 to include temporary borrowing, which allows the district to delay large long-term debt issuance by managing cash flow for construction of capital projects through small short-term temporary borrowing. Finally, the district introduced the concept of tax stabilization in 2022, a budget process improvement that provides council with the opportunity to smooth in costs by utilizing the previous year's unused tax surplus. I'll now turn the presentation over to Mr. Russell to summarize the financial plan.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council, members of the public who may have joined us. Just want to highlight a couple of the things that are directly related to this financial plan. So first off, it conforms to the provincial reporting requirements, which means that it balances. And, that may seem intuitive, but sometimes you have to jump through a number of hoops to get that to happen. So we're pretty happy with how that has worked out. And so we'd like to highlight a few things with respect to the revenues, the expenses, and items that were used to balance. So the tax revenue requirements for 2024 are projected to be $42.25 million. The utility revenues in 2024 are projected to be approximately $20 million. And our total capital spending will be about $69 million in total. On the expense side, the general fund is, we are anticipating expenses of approximately $65 million. Utility expenses are around $19 million. And to get all this to balance, we should comment that we are making repayment of debt of $4.5 million and transfers to reserves, including the asset management components, of just over $25 million in 2024 as we move forward. So those are some of the numerical highlights of the financial plan, and these values will tie to specific line items within the actual bylaw itself. Further to that, we would like to highlight the financial plan tax impacts And as you can see, although this slide is a little small, the larger picture of that is in your package or printed material that goes with this. In 2024, we're projecting a tax increase on the average residential of 9%. And that would work out to approximately $216 on the current residential tax bill. And it stays roughly in that range as we move forward in the next couple of years. So it slightly over 9, slightly under 9 in that $230 to $250 range, going up slightly year by year. Those values are the result of the impacts of some long-term planning and a recovery that the district has undertaken from years where they were not investing in facility replacement. And so as a result of the real estate and facilities master plan and a few other master plans, we have significant facility investments and a lot of the push that you see here in the next few years is a direct result of that and related to the financing of those new facilities. So just like to point that out. And at this point, rather than open it for discussion, we would like to pause and ask General Manager Stone, my apologies, if he would like to add a few remarks with respect to some questions that were directed from council to the administration at the last meeting with respect to Brennan Park concessions. So I'll pause here.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Perfect.
We can, thank you.
Mr. Russell, you had it right the first time. Bill Stoner, General Manager of Community Services. So last week there was a question about the concession. The project that we call is called in the budget the Brennan Park Concession and Parks Admin. We created a memo and we submitted as part of your budget package. And I'm joined today, I believe, by Cal Braggs, the Director of Facility and Planning Construction. We can take some questions on that. Before we do that, I just want to quickly touch base on an element of confusion that I may have contributed to, just to clear it up. This project is called a concession in the budget description. When you dig down into it, what the needs that this project are filling are two. We're looking to fill the need for an accessible change room and washroom and a parks office. And both of these needs have been identified in master plans as short-term requirements within 5 years. So that is what this project is looking to address. It is called a concession largely because of, for lack of a better term, a bad habit. We call the building that this will replace the concession building because I guess sometime in the past it had a working concession in it. Unfortunately, we chose to call the new building the concession building. Even though it is not being designed for a concession, it is being designed for a parks office and an accessible change room, washroom. So some poor choice of a title meant for that. And I think in general in community services, we recognize that we could do a better job of titling some of our budget requests and certainly providing better information to council. And we'll look to do that with the next budget process. So hopefully that clears up the naming issue, but if there's other questions, I'm happy to take them, and Mr. Cal Bragg is here as well, I believe.
Okay, maybe we'll focus just while we have everyone on this particular topic. We'll focus a discussion on this item, and then we'll back out to look at the overall, if everyone's okay with that. So on this item, do we have any questions for staff? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. And thanks very much for the memo. That was really valuable insight into what the thinking on the project is. I just want to confirm, in previous meetings, there was mention of the possibility of this being needed for splash park infrastructure. Is that not required? Does this have anything to do with the splash park?
Take that, or did you want me to take that one?
I can start that through the chair. The main reason we're bringing up this building, as I said, is we need the parks office and the accessible change rooms. If in the course of planning it's identified that there is an opportunity to put a mechanical room in here that will help address the splash park, that it's cost effective to do this and that's operationally effective to do this, we would certainly look at that. It is not the reason this building is being built, and Cal's on the line if he can address that further.
Through the chair, I mean, there's not much to add there, Bill. What we're trying to do is combine buildings where we can and combine operations and combine just to for cost feasibilities. If we can fit the mechanical room in here from the splash park and it fits within the budget, then it's ideal to do that. This building is not for the actual mechanical of the splash park. This is just a side add-on, and we'll know over the next 2 months as we go through the splash pad design if it will be included in this building or not. But yeah, the building first and foremost is a parks office and also a public washroom, which is fully accessible.
Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks. A follow-up. What's the timescale of the splash park? Projected timescale?
Through the chair, we're looking at completing construction towards the end of 2024. We're planning with the proponent at the moment. We don't have a complete date of that. We'll know in about 6 weeks here when the completion date is going to be scheduled.
So I'm confused by the timing. If the splash park is supposed to be finished this year in 2024, but we are budgeting for planning of the concession building in 2024, I'm confused by the possibility of using it as a mechanical room.
We can still, through the chair, we can still use it as a mechanical, so the buildings would be finished at a different time. You are correct there. And I think that's where the confusion comes in. Where the utilities come in and then funnel back out, there's utilities that have to go to the there's utilities that have to go to the parks office / public washrooms, and there's also utilities that need to go to the splash pad. If we can combine them, which decreases costs of both projects, then we will do that. If it doesn't decrease the costs of both projects, then they will be separate.
Okay, so I imagine you have some temporary solution for the mechanical supply to the splash park for 2024 construction, and then maybe put it into the concession building. Okay, that's fine. I'm confused by the timeline, but that's okay. Another question was one of the in the real estate and facilities master plan, it identified the existing Brennan Park concession as an unsafe space for workers. And I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly that they are in a temporary trailer right now that does meet health and safety standards for our parks workers.
Through the chair, yes, we do have a modular trailer that's on site. I think it's about 50 meters, 70 meters away, that park staff are utilizing as their office instead of using that building. Correct.
Yep. On this topic, yeah. I'll look around. Are there any? I'll go to Councillor Pettingill and we'll come back. Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill, then Anderson.
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to understand the numbers in the memo a bit, because it talks about 300,000 for planning in 2024, and then it talks about construction 2025 at around 2.5 million, 10% or $250,000 for planning. Is that the same design planning number? Or are we talking about a total of $550,000 for design and planning? And is that, so I guess I'm looking for clarity on what is the amount we're putting towards design and planning and in total, and what is sort of a normal ratio for that expense on buildings, if there is one.
Through the chair, yeah, it obviously varies between each buildings, but a good rule of thumb is usually about 10% of the total project budget goes towards design and planning. It's a very rough number.
So that 250 then is included in the 300. The 300 is that 250 plus a bit of extra, or because it again talks about design and planning in 2024 and 2025.
Through the chair, there's going to be a bit of a crossover on timing here. So we allocate, give or take, $250,000 to $300,000 just for the design proportion, and that will be for 2024. And then we flow into construction the year after in 2025. There's a slight crossover there, like there's not a definitive time when it starts and stops. It's a rough timeline.
Okay, so we're talking about around 300, 250 to 300, and not 550 for design and planning right now is our estimate.
Through the chair, correct.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Yep. I note that of the $250,000 allocated to design and planning for this project, there is $20,000 specifically for engagement, public relations, and advertising. In the general fund that we're looking at for this year in the financial plan, we do have $36,000 allocated to capital projects communications support. I'm wondering what is envisioned with respect to this particular project for public engagement. I'm trying to understand this budget item for this particular building project. What would we be doing for $20,000 for public engagement and advertising? It seems high amount. I'm just curious if you may be able to elaborate on what might be envisioned for spending that $20,000.
Through the chair, it is high and it's an allocation. We've just parked that number. It doesn't mean we're going to spend $20,000 for this. And I'll pull it back to the verbiage here. If we do go for a concession stand here and we do decide that we're going to combine a building all in one, we do want to get some community input and community user group feedback as well, which will be then required. There's a bit of work and resources, and that's where the cost is allocated. And we've done this just as an allocation because it is a public facing building. And we do want community input in these instances.
Thank you. That satisfies me.
Thank you. Anyone else before we go back to Councillor Hamilton? Councillor Hamilton?
Thanks very much. And my next question is about the current estimated cost. In the real estate facilities master plan in 2018, the estimated cost of the building was $2.8 million. The current estimated cost of the building is still $2.8 million. Has there been a change in the scope of the building, or has this number just been carried from 2018 to now? My concern is that we've carried this number from 2018 till now, and the real cost of this building will be more like $7 million, which if we take the cost of inflation, building inflation over these 5 years, that's what we're going to get to.
Yeah, through the chair, the real estate facilities master plan stated it was 2,000 square feet as well. And again, you noted it was back in 2018. And what we're finding is as we drill into the actual product, and in particular, this product is with Public Works and their operations, we don't know if it's going to be 2,000 square foot or not. So again, we've just allocated this number based on a rough size we think we could build this for. It wasn't just literally a cut from the 2018 to pull it in. The other variable here is we are redoing the Public Works office as well. And this the facility, sorry, this is a satellite facility for Public Works. We haven't got to the detail and finalized that scope of work because we're just not there in this process yet for this project of exactly what Public Works needs for this. So we'll get to there over the next 2.5 to 3 months. But at this stage, again, it's a placeholder because we're just not at that stage of, we don't know if it's 2,000 square feet. We don't know the size of the accessible bathrooms yet. We're just not there yet. And it's as far as the process goes.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. And my next question is about the next touch point for council. In the memo, it said that you'd be coming back to council at the end of 2024 with a cost A estimate. Is that still your next planned touch point for council?
Through the chair, that is the next plan touch point. We can bring that sooner to council. We still have the Class D, CB to go through in the process, so we can come back to council as we get to a Class C or a Class D, to then get to the point of, what is this product and what we think the cost of this product is going to be.
Yeah, thanks. One of my concerns here is that we're obviously coming into a time of a lot of budgetary pressure. This is a building has been identified as a core building. This is not a critical building. I recognize that it's required. I recognize that we want to get this building built, but I want to be sure that we're making clear plans forward in times of extraordinarily high budget increases, right? So I'd like to, my concern is that we go and spend $300,000 to get a Class A estimate on a building that costs way more than we're willing to spend. So I'd like to see if there's a way we can get an estimate to council, a touch point to council sooner than the Class A estimate, with a clear scope of the project, perhaps a Class D or a Class C estimate. Do you have a suggestion how we might be able to achieve that?
Through the chair, yes, we can put this in a process and come back to council at a Class D or a Class C, and we can come back in Q2 for next year, and that'll get us to a stage where, my estimate is about $15,000 to $18,000 that we need to spend to get to that stage. We need some schematic drawings, and we need some quantity surveys in there. We need a geotech to check some items there. But that instead of spending the 300 and have to retract, if we decide that the product's not feasible, then we'll be spending between, say, $15,000 and $20,000. We can come back to council, and at least that'll put us on a direction to say yes or no.
Great. That sounds like a sensible plan to me. That makes me much more comfortable than charging forward with spending $300,000 to get a Class A estimate on a building that council may decide is not within our priorities for 2025. So would you require a motion to that effect, or would that roll over into sort of normal course of business?
We'd always say a motion would be helpful, but I think that at this point, if we move on with the rest of the budget piece, and then we can maybe deal with that separately, and we don't necessarily need that motion tonight either. So we can discuss that. We would like to have a checkpoint. I understand where you're going, and I've worked to do that. But if we can continue with the rest of the budget piece, then we can circle back to that. Okay. Any other questions on this particular piece before we go back? Okay. All right. Mr. Russell, did you have an additional slide, or you just wanted to provide that off ramp for us on this one topic?
I can do both. I do have one additional slide. It basically outlines what what our resolution is for this evening, which I see my friendly assistant here in the background is created for you and put on screen. This is the resolution that is in the report, and that is what we are asking council to do. And I'll stop here and turn it back to you, Chair, for additional discussion.
Okay, thank you. This is an important slide, but I wasn't sure what level of detail you were going to be providing your next slide. So, council, thank you for the focused discussion on the one topic, but now more broadly with the budget. Do we questions? I'm going to start with Councillor Finch, and then I'll go to Councillor Stoner.
Thanks, Mayor. At the very end of the staff report, there is a revitalization exemption table with 2 items in it. I went back to the same report from last year and noted that there were no such exemptions in last year's report. Coastal Ford Sales and Matthews West developments are noted in this table, and these two, I don't have any memory of seeing any information in such a table in previous budget exercises. So I was wondering what is behind the revitalization exemptions for these 2 companies.
Through the mayor. I think the first and best way to address that question is to say, certainly for Matthews West, that was an oversight last year. There is a tax exemption, a revitalization tax exemption, has been granted to them for properties at the oceanfront, and it extends through 2024, I believe is this last year. Okay. For coastal forward sales had an exemption on the building, and we believe that that was tied to the building inspection. And unfortunately, our detailed files and building inspection are off-site. We weren't able to get them out of storage and review them in time for this meeting today. What I would say is the two values that have been identified are identified on BC Assessment's exemption listing that we received from BC Assessment. So those properties and a portion of those properties are exempt from taxation based on the assessment that BC Assessment provides us. So we are exempting them. And I believe that that was overlooked last year because the coastal forward one, for example, I think because being a building, being more related to buildings than the land, let's say, again, I think it was just missed in our pickup. Like when we went in and ran the information for building exemptions, or sorry, tax exemptions, we missed that. So I think the error was an error of omission in 2023 rather than in 2024.
Okay. Don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to you next, Councillor Stern. Can you just take down the resolution so that folks can see folks online can see us all? I don't know how simple. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Stern.
Thank you. Through the chair, just to follow up on Councillor French's question, do we know what the sunset clause is for the tax revitalization agreement that would apply to the Coastal Ford Sales Center?
That's the information we were attempting to garner from the detailed agreement. The agreement's offsite. We haven't had an opportunity to review that. So it is our understanding there was a previous agreement, which I believe ran out in 2020. So if that was extended, again, the original agreement was issued in 2015. My understanding is that under any circumstance, they can run a maximum of 10 years. So I believe that it also would be up in 2024, but we've not been able to confirm that.
Okay. Is it possible for staff to bring that information back at a later date? I don't think it's a game changer for me this evening, but it'd be helpful to know what the context is there, because I think all those agreements predated any of us who are currently sitting around this horseshoe.
Yes, it would. Yes, we would be able to return with that information.
I did have one other question around the financial plan summary for the general fund. So that's page 9 of our package. And just looking at the 5-year financial plan horizon with the revenues, I think I know the answer to this, but I was just seeking some clarity. The total revenue requirement actually decreases by 2028 from 76 million in 2024 to 74 million in 2028. And I appreciate that our 5th year in the 5-year financial plan is not as robust as our first year in the 5-year financial plan. But I was just curious, given that the revenues are fairly stable, but the general taxation rate increases by almost $20 million. And I'm just wondering if staff can explain that gap. Is it just because we don't know which grants and things like that will be coming in 4 or 5 years' time? And so to balance the books, we allocate it to general taxation?
Through the mayor, I think there's a number of factors at play here. We're looking at increases, known increases. So for example, projections for inflationary items like staff costs. We have some other items that we've also projected. So, for example, financing costs associated with debt issued for various buildings. We have a reasonable idea based on the timing within the capital plan when we expect to have to start repaying those. And so those can fluctuate and they are movable to some degree. Obviously, if council chooses not to proceed with the building, that will have some impact. Some of the grants we are showing we have received. Some of the future grants, obviously, we're not aware of, and so we're not up to projecting something that we don't feel that there's a reasonable basis in. I believe that those types of things would put additional pressure on the tax levy. But when I look at the overall year-over-year increases, there's some years where it jumps fairly significantly. But as an example, in the last year of this 5-year plan, the increase in the taxes is approximately the same as it has been this year from 23 to 24. So that's not a significant increase, and in fact, from a percentage standpoint, will be lower than it is this year. I think, and I recognize that you're looking at the overall revenues. Sorry, not just. The other piece that we're seeing is we have some items that are named as revenues, okay, such as proceeds of sale of assets, which are one-time things, which we anticipate will occur and in fact would need to occur early in the financial plan to allow us to replenish our reserves, to maintain our ability to meet the capital plan requirements. So there are some things that are kind of a one-off that occur, and once that takes place, that's great. It replenishes your reserves, and then over time, you're going to use that money up. But I think that hopefully is points you in the right direction for an explanation.
Thank you. Council, other questions? Not seeing any. We have been through this quite a few. Councilor Finch, yeah, go ahead.
I'll move the staff recommendation if you're ready for it.
Are you seconding that, Councilor Stoner seconds? Thank you. And would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I would like to speak to it. So this is the 5th budget process for me as councillor after watching the process from the gallery dating back to the early 1990s. This financial plan, I find, is unique in a bunch of ways. It's a post-pandemic budget, of course, created in a high inflation environment following decades of single-digit tax increase budgets that gave insufficient attention to our aging infrastructure. And we're now faced with a long list of municipal buildings that are at end of life or in desperate need of upgrades to stave off end of life. And that comes on top of a quickly growing population due to how attractive this place is as a place to live. Not a city, not a resort, but just nicely in between the two. This financial plan presents a number of non-discretionary cost increases that we're committed to. There are only a few items that council has decision-making power over in this budget. And I spent more than a few hours going through all the elements in the budget with an eye for what could be taken out. And in my opinion, everything in this plan is justified. And as uncomfortable as I am with the significant tax increase that I'm basically endorsing, I'd be more uncomfortable trying to remove things to bring down that increase. There's just nothing more to take out of this budget. I don't see any item that I feel can reasonably be pushed out to next year or subsequent years. This budget pushes forward necessities like additional policing, more firefighting resources, water system improvements, sewer upgrades, solid waste improvements, and recreation center renovations. And very exciting for many families. Looks like we're going to have a splash park at some point next year. And I heard loud and clear that a splash park is something that families are very much wanting in our community. And because it rains here a fair amount, I also want to point out that we're investing in our library, another family-friendly oriented facility that also happens to be of great value to seniors and those who are less interested in our outdoor recreation amenities. I support this motion, and I support the plan that it represents.
Thank you, Councillor French. Other comments? Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, I will also be supporting the motion on the floor for first three readings of the 2024 to 2028 financial plan. Following on from my Councillor French's comments, this is a tricky budget. It's a tricky budget year with a net tax increase of 9% for our community, knowing the number of pressures that people are feeling in their day-to-day lives with inflationary pressures, cost of living, and all the other things. We know that the district is not immune to those inflationary pressures, the pressures of cost of living, and ensuring that we continue to be a great district that can provide great service to a community that has increasing demands of the services that they expect from their local governments. This budget really does try to manage that pressure while recognizing the importance of investing in our people and the people who deliver those services, while also trying to plan for the future and the growth of our community. Everything from a really needed investment in our asset management plan. So 2.4% of that tax increase is looking at annual level contributions that are needed just to ensure the replacement of existing infrastructure. This is something that we haven't done before. Starting to build our reserves in a way that will actually set people up for success in the future to make sure that there's money set aside to replace our aging infrastructure and maintain it in a good way. That asset management cost, unfortunately, does not include funding for growth or capital additions or the cost of accounting for climate change impacts on our infrastructure and our services. And so that's why the rest of the budget is also really important. We often hear a lot of criticism that we are not investing sufficiently in our infrastructure, everything from wastewater to water to our facilities. And this budget shows that that is the opposite. There's $70.6 million of capital investment in 2024 alone. 53.1 of that is general fund for things like active transportation, parks and recreation, Brennan Park, all things that we hear about time and time again from our community as critical components. 17.5 million of that is for utilities, upgrading our wastewater treatment plant, doing important work around our water system, making sure that there's enough water and that the pipes are up to speed so that we can actually be delivering clean, crystal clear water to our communities for the year to come and the 5 years looking forward. So I am grateful for all the work that staff and this council have done and the feedback that we've received from our community in order to make the difficult decisions that have gotten us here tonight for first three readings of this budget. And I think that it does balance the many pressures that we're feeling as a growing community in a way that is fiscally responsible and forward-looking. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner. Other comments? Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks to staff and everyone, the community and the rest of council for working through this. It's always a long process where we get to talk about our community priorities. I think I agree with what my colleagues have already said. I do want to highlight that we have, as a council, in my first term and last year, have had budget increases that seem to be typically far below most other communities in BC or most of our neighbors, at least. And this year is higher, but more in line with what other communities are saying. And so while it's a shift for us, it's actually not out of norm for what people are seeing across the province in terms of inflation and so on. And that's maybe small comfort if you're looking to save every penny. But I hope, and I am a firm believer that, taxes often get a bad rap, but it's actually how we pull our resources as a community to come together as a community to provide the services that we all need, especially those who are struggling more. And so I think for me, our willingness to contribute to our community is a good measure of the strength of our community and how much we care for each other. I am, a little bit more hesitant looking forward. Some years where we're doing catch up on the infrastructure investment shortfalls. The asset management plan, I think, is something I'm really quite proud of us doing, and that is a significant portion of this budget. And it's necessary, but it does mean sort of bringing our community into the budget increase norm of the province, which does still feel a little bit uncomfortable. And so, can we sustain that for the next 5 years, this level? I'm a little less certain there, but I think this year, with the items we have in the budget and the things that are just so many demands, this is where we are and what we need to be doing. And so really look forward to strategic planning and having another look and continuing the discussion with everyone in this room and the community over the next few years as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pettingill. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I echo the comments of each of my previous colleague speakers. I'll just add the general statement that I continue to be impressed with the machinery, if you like, the process, the ever higher standards that we staff really are applying towards the annual financial plan initiatives. Another general comment is regarding public input. Last week, we had a session where that was what we were to be doing on the agenda. Each year I reflect on this. We do receive public input, and substantial this time around, and the communications department does a very good job, I think, in assembling it, making clear and coherent what we did here and how and where. But I reflect on the fact that we don't actually engage with that input during our meeting when we are expected to consider it. And I think that it's important that we be seen to have considered public input. And there were some patterns in what we've heard. We've heard the comment, and I agree with Councillor Stoner regarding the robust nature of our planning these days for infrastructure. But what is infrastructure? For the public, it actually includes amenities. And I'm not sure that we can say the same things, and there's different reasons behind it, for our planning regarding community amenities. And that is something that comes up with the public in there, and sometimes they do label it infrastructure. A couple of other comments. These are basically work plan topics, and they're not really of urgency tonight because we'll be able to consider them next time. They're in the budget for spending in 2025 and beyond. However, there's $30,000 allocated to heritage strategy statements of significance. In fact, most communities do not engage with professional experts to write these documents. They rely on local volunteers. And when we come to consider that further, and we will have opportunity to, I would suggest that expectation of pursuing it that way may need to be revisited. Essentially, a consultant is going to be interviewing local volunteers. That's where the expertise resides. That's that $30,000 over 3 years, starting in 2026. The green economy sector impact assessment is scheduled to start in 2027, while the outdoor recreation in 2026. And again, we'll have opportunity to revisit this, but I would suggest that the green economy should be prioritized. And I have some reasons for this. The green economy includes the housing or the building supply, material supply chain. That should be considered a priority, as housing is a priority for us, and we have a number of firms engaged in delivering housing for us and can do even more. It is a high-wage job sector. It is a sector in which the Squamish Nation is profoundly engaged. And we do have a need to build a picture of this sector and its affiliated clusters. This is work awaiting, and building that picture also will help us with our employment land needs analysis. We have a number of firms in this area that are indicating they're having difficulties with land. So we'll revisit that again in future, but it is a prioritizing whether we should do one or the other in 2026, 2027. I will otherwise be interested in the opportunity for Council to apply its strategic plan lens to some of these items. I guess finally, looking forward with great interest to a report from staff on the employment lands tool, the modeling tool, and its scope and how it will upgrade from the last, and the marine impact study scope. I do hope that council will be able to engage with staff on the scope for that very important study upcoming next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I'll certainly be supporting the motion on the floor. I want to thank staff for the immense amount of work that it takes to get this kind of budget together. It's a lot of work to read it, obviously, but every single word we're reading has been written by a member of staff, and every single line that we pour over has already been poured over by our diligent staff. So thank you very much for the work you do to put together this very thorough budget. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Greenlaw.
Yeah, I feel as though everything I would like to say has already been said. So thank you for all your hard work. And as Councillor Hamilton just pointed out, as much effort as we put into reading this, staff puts in a lot more. So it's no small feat to keep a municipality running, especially in a financially healthy way. So I appreciate all the efforts you've made to help that happen. Thanks.
Thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, I'd like to start by, as others have, by thanking our staff. We have some here today in chambers. We have others joining online, but the budget process involves just a broad cross-section of our organization that really leads to where we are today. So just thank you for all the work throughout the process, and to work with council to arrive here at a supportable document. And I'm quite excited about many pieces here. I think others have spoken to the asset management plan, and I think this is really, really important. I'm very proud of this group to really be taking a long view, and certainly a much longer view than just, I don't know, a 4-year election cycle. This is the asset management plan, and including its really the rubber hitting the road of making financial contributions towards asset replacement in the future, is a reaction to where we are today. Today, we've been working our way through a facilities deficit. We know that we have facilities that are beyond capacity, beyond end of life, and for all wide range of probably very good reasons, past councils haven't set us up well to be dealing with that. And we're working very hard to deal with that, as well as taking on the responsibility of ensuring that our future community and its leaders are in for a far better position when it's time to address their future asset needs. Very excited about that. I wanted to touch on the transit service. We've been here before, but we've committed to expansion of our transit service, and I believe quite aggressively, and we need to see that matching funding come from the province to actually see it come to fruition. And I look forward to that happening. And I think we've communicated around this table that that's an expectation. This is a goal for our community, and the community has communicated that by riding the transit system and having phenomenal numbers of ridership and demanding better service. And we're here to do that. And I hope the funds, the folks at the province can help us along on that journey. And not noted here is our continued advocacy towards regional transit. We have a lot of transit needs in our community, and I look forward to seeing hopefully all of them advance. I also want to touch on the large aspect of sort of planning a community that is for everybody. And a couple things that jump out here for me are the age-friendly planning initiative that's coming, and it's key to ensure that as the community evolves over time, we're evolving in a way that really takes into consideration all the needs of our community. This is also reflected in the all ages and routes project under active transportation, and that thought process of really thinking about the community as a whole, all the subsets of it, I know appears in staff's thinking as they go about their work in other areas, but it shows up specifically in these pieces. The facilities are a driver here. We know that. Fire hall number 2 is underway. Public Works is happening. Brennan Park in 2024 is going to start seeing some changes, and it's really just the beginning. The work there to increase accessibility, decrease our carbon footprint is also about setting us up for the future as we look at future year expansions of ice rink and pool, which are appearing in in the financial plan in later years. So it's an exciting time for Brennan Park. I think we could say long overdue as far as community expectations go. And I know that the district, everybody has been working towards this being in this position for a long time. It's taken a lot of work to get here, and I'm quite excited about that. I told myself I'd stop speaking after 5 minutes, and I'm gonna do that. So there's so much here, and it took us so much work to get here, and I look forward to seeing the projects and initiatives encapsulated in this budget coming to life in 2024 and beyond. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, Council, we're on to, we have some adoptions to do. And we do have folks available if we have questions on them, but generally, as is, yeah, go ahead. Oh,
would this be a reasonable opportunity?
Yes.
Yep. So I'd like to put a motion on the floor that staff come back to council. I don't know if I want to put a timeline on it. Can't see staff, so I won't put a timeline on it, with a Class D estimate for the Brennan Park concession before progressing to Class C or A estimates.
I have a question, but I also saw Ms. Latimer's hand, so I'm going to start there.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just as a point of clarification, a Class D estimate would already come back to council as part of our normal operational processes. So that may save council some time in terms of putting a motion on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, and then I've got.
Yeah, so my confusion was that the staff memo said that the next touch point for council was the Class A estimate, and that was confirmed by Cal. So that's my concern about maybe our understanding of our normal procedure, or if it's our normal procedure, I'm comfortable with it, but it didn't seem to come through in the memo.
Staff can bring back the Class D estimate as part of our operational process.
Thank you. I was going to make the suggestion that we see regular updates on our overall progress on the facilities work, and perhaps just asking for it specifically to be cited there would give us, at least ensure that we get, I believe those are quarterly. Is it quarterly? Yeah, quarterly frequency updates on overall, and it's the opportunity to explore that. So it would definitely come as part of that, as sort of in due course, but we could also be explicit with that. And I think that might be a reasonable place to put that, if you'd like, if you still feel we need to make a motion. I'll be looking forward in that report myself. So no? Okay. So motion's been, okay, retracted. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're on to adoption. So again, we don't have presentations with adoption as per our normal operating procedure, but we do have staff available if there are questions from council. So, Councillor Stoner, are you moving the first one, which is the land development procedures bylaw? Great. Moved by Councillor Stoner. I'll second it. Any comments on this? I'll call question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I did have a question if about ensuring we receive an annual report on the variances, just so we can understand on an ongoing basis what sort of things that we've delegated are being varied and so on. I'm not sure if that requires a motion, and it doesn't have to be tonight, but I'm looking for some guidance on how to ensure we get that.
Okay. What we can do there is I can take that away with staff and just make sure that we're aligned on reporting expectations. And then if we need to provide more direction, we can do that as a council. Okay. So next we have the zoning bylaw amendment bylaw for 1005 and 1009 Raven Drive. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question on this, and I recognize that perhaps the best place for this question would have been when we saw it recently, but it missed my memory at that point in time. During the initial discussion on that property, there was a lot of concern about the location of the garbage bins being very close to the neighbors. They're within a few meters of the neighbor's house. And I noticed on the drawings that there was no change to the location of the garbage bins. At what point in time was that decision? Is that decision solidified, and it was decided that they would stay there?
Through the mayor, I am just concerned about potentially presenting the information. I think I could answer this question with just repeating what was presented previously. Staff had spoken to the applicant about working with them to look at a future location at the development permit process because they needed more clarification with BC Hydro as to what options they have for constructing things under the hydro right away.
So the exact location will be done at a future step, and we're also, after public hearing before adoption, new information space, just to keep that in mind.
Thank you for that reminder. Thanks. Well, that's it.
Okay, moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And next, we're on to the District of Squamish Housing Agreement Bylaw for 39180 Finch Place, the non-market rentals. I'll move that. Second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have District of Squamish Housing Agreement Bylaw for 39180 Finch Place. This is the market rental of that development. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have District of Squamish Housing Agreement Bylaw for 37781 and 37790 Second Ave, and that's for the market rentals. I'll move that. Second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Oh, there you go. So now we're on to staff reports. So this is section 4A. I'll pass it over to staff to introduce themselves on the topic.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, planner with Community Development, and tonight I'm here to present a subdivision application for a property in the Agricultural Land Reserve for Council to consider forwarding the application to the Agricultural Land Commission for decision. The subject property is located at 4311 Paradise Valley Road and is within the ALR. The property was subdivided in 2016 under Section 514 of the Local Government Act, a subdivision to provide residence for a relative, and approved by the ALC. At the July 12, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting, Council resolved to forward a previous subdivision application for the subject property to the ALC for decision. On February 7th, 2023, the ALC refused the subdivision application. The landowners have prepared a revised subdivision plan and have applied to have this new application considered by the ALC. The parcel is a 4.52 hectare property zoned rural residential 2. Neighboring properties to the north, south, and east are also zoned RL2 and also in the ALR. The Agricultural Land Commission Act is the primary piece of legislation governing agricultural land in BC. The ALC's mandate is to preserve agricultural land. It has the authority to determine the appropriateness of future subdivision and non-farm uses proposed in the ALR, to exclude land, and to advise on inclusion. Provincial legislation requires that the owners of land within the ALR seek permission from the ALC prior to subdivision. ALC permission is required prior to receiving municipal approvals. The first step in the subdivision process for ALR land is for the local government to consider by council resolution whether they will forward the application by a landowner to subdivide onto the ALC for consideration. If the local government does not forward the application to the ALC, then the application will be closed and the proposal will not proceed. By forwarding the application to the ALC, council is not approving or endorsing the proposed subdivision, but supporting its consideration by the ALC. The ALC's permission may be accompanied by specific conditions. If the application for the ALR subdivision is forwarded to the ALC by council and then not approved by the ALC, the subdivision process would not proceed through further municipal processes. Section 514 of the Local Government Act allows subdivision of a parcel of land that would not meet the minimum parcel size requirements in the relevant zone, provided that it is for the purpose of providing residence for a relative. As a condition of subdivision approval, the owner must enter into a restrictive covenant that restricts further subdivision of a period of 5 years. As previously noted, the property was subdivided in 2016 to provide residence for one of the property owner's children. As the legislated 5-year prohibition on further subdivision has passed, the owners have submitted another subdivision application to the ALC to provide residence for the owner's other child and family. The property is currently developed with 2 single-unit dwellings. No development is proposed with this subdivision application. The intention is to subdivide off one of the existing homes to create title for a family member. Given that no development is proposed with the subdivision application, it would not trigger the requirement for a development permit for the protection of environment or protection from flood hazard. The previous subdivision application contemplated a 1-hectare parcel with a property line extending west into the BC Hydro right-of-way, running through the property. Some of the ALC's rationale for refusing the previous application noted that the most capable land on the property for agriculture is located under the hydro right-of-way, and subdividing this area into smaller parcels would increase the likelihood that the resulting lots would be used solely for residential purpose in the future. The decision also notes that the least productive area for farming is area fronting Paradise Valley Road, and that this area can be used for residential or farm-related infrastructure without impacting the high agricultural capability on the property. The new application is proposing a 0.38 hectare parcel and does not include any of the area within the hydro right-of-way. Should this subdivision application be approved by the ALC, the landowners would be able to submit a subdivision application to the district. As it appears that the revised subdivision plan may address a number of the reasons the previous proposal was rejected by the ALC, staff are recommending referring the application to the ALC for their consideration. So staff's recommendation is to forward the application onto the ALC for their consideration. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Council, questions? Councilor Hamilton.
Thanks very much for the presentation. So the original lot before subdivision into the lot on the north, I think it's 4481. That was an RL2 zone, and then it was split into two RL2 zones. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, that's correct.
And so would this, in principle, then split this smaller lot into 2 RL2 zones?
Through the mayor, that's correct. There's no changing to the zoning proposed. It's just a subdivision to create an additional parcel.
Does this increase the legal build capacity on that property, the combined 3 properties now.
Through the mayor, no, it doesn't. And all of this is a referral to the ALC for their consideration. If it were to be successful, then they would have to submit a subdivision application to the district for consideration. And one of the requirements would likely be a flood hazard assessment and likely a covenant restricting them to the existing capability on the lot so that they aren't technically increasing the development potential. Also, it would require a covenant stating that it can't be sold for at least or further subdivided for 5 years and must be inhabited by a relative of the owners, which it currently is.
Presumably that inhabitants also has a sunset, right?
Yes, it does have a sunset, but I don't know off the top of my head. I believe it's likely 5 years.
And so I noticed the lot to the north is 1.26 hectares, and the minimum lot size for an RL2 property is 4 hectares. So we're now going to have 3 RL2 properties, all of which being below the minimum property size for an RL2 property. Is that a normal course of procedure?
Through the mayor, it is uncommon. It has been, the Section 514 of the Local Government Act contemplates this specific form of subdivision and allows it to be less than the parcel size prescribed in the zone. And it was successfully completed on this parcel previously. So it is not common, but it is something that has been in the Local Government Act for some time and contemplated as an allowable course of action for someone to subdivide their property to provide residence for a relative.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I'm just wondering if staff can speak a little bit further to their rationale to recommend that this get forwarded to the ALC, given that subdivision of agricultural lots is typically, agricultural lots are typically against the OCP policy, and a significant portion of the ALC's decision speaks to the risk that smaller lots would increase the likelihood that the resulting lots would be used solely for residential purposes, and the intrusion of residential parcels into the agricultural land reserve may create more conflicts between residential and agricultural uses in the area, which typically aligns with our OCP policy. So I'm just curious how staff balance that with the allowance in the Local Government Act for Section 514, and where we came out with the recommendation that we have in front of us.
Through the mayor, so staff considered the reasons for approval or refusal by the ALC and the applicant's desire to have this revised subdivision plan considered. Staff felt that a number of the issues that were noted were addressed by this revised subdivision plan, and unfortunately for the proponent, they did request a reconsideration by the ALC. The ALC refused that because they said that presenting this revised subdivision plan is new information and required a new application. So they are going through this process again to try and get this reconsidered by the ALC, and staff felt that the ALC would be the appropriate body to determine if this subdivision layout is appropriate or not.
Okay, any other, Councillor Penningill?
Is it unreasonable to think that the 2 lots, the aggregate value of the subdivided 2 lots would be higher than the single lot typically?
Through the mayor, I'm not sure, like the aggregate financial value or developable. I'm not sure I can make a comment on that.
Okay, Councillor Hamilton?
So I understand the 5-year sunset on having these properties perhaps owned and inhabited by family. But in 7 years' time or 10 years' time, what I see here are 3 RL2 lots, each of which have the right to put an accessory dwelling on them, thereby doubling the residential capacity of those 3 lots. Do I understand that correctly?
Through the mayor, because this is in the ALR, there are restrictions on the use of the land. And I believe a future project is looking at egg zoning throughout the district to align with what is allowed in the ALR. Just because the zoning may permit an accessory dwelling unit doesn't necessarily mean it would be allowed under the ALR regs.
But in the building that we're talking about is an accessory dwelling building. The building that's being, the building that that's currently sitting on this lot, do I understand correctly that that is an accessory residential dwelling?
Through the mayor, this property is unique in that it has two. I'm not sure that this is technically an accessory dwelling unit. This was built before those regulations even existed, so they were able to obtain approval to build 2 or 3 homes on this very large lot. And then the first one was subdivided off through this provision, and they're looking to subdivide this existing building off under this provision as well. But this preceded our accessory dwelling unit regulations that came into effect in, I believe, 2017.
So, okay, so my concern here is that we're actually increasing the build capacity on these lots. I have no objection to somebody subdividing the lots to allocate that to different family members, because the spirit of that is not increasing the development capacity of the lots. But in 10 years, I'm concerned that it will. Is there anything we can do to ensure that the development capacity will not be increased on these lots?
Through the mayor, at this point in the process, no, this is just a decision on whether council is comfortable forwarding this application for the ALC to make their decision or not. That is what this specific application is being considered in front of council right now. Through the subdivision process, if it was successful at the ALC, while that does not go to council, it is in a high flood hazard area, and the approving officer can require reports and covenants to, deal with hazard mitigation. And that could be something that would be addressed through the subdivision process if it even gets to that point.
Would it be reasonable to consider zoning these to RL1 instead of RL2, which to my reading of the zoning bylaw appears more suitable for these smaller lots?
Through the mayor, that's not really something that staff considered as part of this. Again, this is a decision on whether council feels it's appropriate to forward this subdivision application that's in front of them to the ALC for consideration. If that's not something that council is comfortable with, they certainly have the option to not refer it. But ultimately, if it is referred, the ALC would still have to make a decision on this new subdivision application that would be referred to them.
Councilor Pettingill.
Just a process question. I assume if a majority of us weren't comfortable with this, the correct process would be for someone to move and second it and then to vote it down as opposed to not move it.
I think that that it should be moved and seconded and debated and voted. That's our path to getting to the answer, whatever that is. Councillor Stoner.
You could also make a motion to not refer it.
Okay, I don't see any other hands for questions, so we are at the motion. We do have a recommendation before us. Is anyone ready to move the staff recommendation? Moved by Councillor French. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Anderson. Would you like to speak to it? Yep, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. And I'm going this route because, as staff have pointed out, this is fairly simple at this point. It's simply a referral to the Agricultural Land Commission, who will apply their expertise into considering what these folks wish to do on the property. And if the ALC decides this time that they can live with this change, we get another crack at it.
Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not prepared to support this. I think when I had another look at our OCP, recognizing this is outside of the growth management boundary, looking at our policy around agricultural areas and so on, it doesn't seem to fit what we are trying to do. I believe there are, as a family, ways they can extract and share some of the value and equity in the property. I don't believe we have to allow subdivision. I am concerned that subdivision doing so for future owners and so on does reduce the agricultural value of the land. And I believe it will also increase the aggregate value of the plots, which is again working against some of the agricultural aspirations. And just while there are 2 residences on this plot already, I think being outside of the growth management boundary, we don't want to provide a path even after 5 years or so on for that to increase. And so I think for me, I'd want to see something that was a little more aligned to what I feel our existing policies. And sorry, I also do have concerns about conflicts with other farms as we start allowing more residential density in agricultural areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I'm in support of the motion. I think it's a good compromise that the applicant has struck here. And I think it does, to me, satisfy all concerns, including one other. One of the highlights of this property is its fisheries values. And the compromise proposal that is being put forward is only to the better of consideration of those values. This is the mouth of Swift Creek. And through community interaction with the property owners, it's my impression that they're people with very high values as regards looking after the land and including its agricultural capabilities. So I'm confident in having this forwarded to the ALC.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments. I'll venture my own. I'm speaking in support of the motion. I think the proposal goes a long way to address the reasons that it wasn't successful on the last attempt. I do think that we've heard some conversation tonight around the sort of the layers of how land use is controlled, whether it's through zoning. We're here talking about the subdivision, but there's this other layer of the ALC, and I think this particular mechanism that they're using is there on purpose. It's there intentionally. It's there to ensure that multi generations of folks can participate in agriculture as well, and that long term betterment of the sort of the health of the agricultural sort of ecosystem, as it were, can carry on intergenerationally. So I think that mechanism is there for very good reasons, and I think the ALC is the appropriate place to make the decisions on the how the impacts to the agricultural uses on the land going forward. So I'm supportive of the motion on the table. Any other comments, Councillor Greenlaw?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, but I won't be supporting the motion. I appreciate the desire to share the lot with family members, but I do think it's of the utmost important to preserve our agricultural lands. And I too have concerns that this might facilitate land use by potential future owners that's not in alignment with our best interest as a municipality.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, this is a difficult one for me as well, because we're balancing a lot of different, there's different authorities coming into play, and it's being clear on whose authority is where and what the objectives are of each one. And to my understanding, the application to the ALC is looking at the agricultural impact. And I think that the proponent has come with a reasonable solution to minimize the reduction in agricultural capacity of that lot. My concern is the next step and the next 10 years is whether that opens the lot up to develop more development potential or those 3 lots into more development potential. But through our conversation, I think I understand that that is more within our jurisdiction, and we will be able to change that or restrict that development potential if we see fit moving forward. So with that, I will support the motion to forward this to the ALC for them to consider the agricultural impact of this proposed subdivision.
Okay. And oh, sorry, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. I will support the motion on the floor. Also slightly hesitant about it because I do think it goes against some of our general OCP policy. But I do think that the applicants have made an attempt to try and address some of the concerns around continuity and integrity of the ALR land base with this particular site. And so I think it is best left up to the ALC to make that decision whether this particular proposal is in line with provincial regulations. So I'll support it this time.
All right. Thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And any opposed? Councillor Greenlaw and Pettingill opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Council, I'm looking for a motion to close. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Greenlaw. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll now recess for 15 minutes and we'll return. Thank you.